even though the rates are going to be lower, I think we're going to see volume increase dramatically. Probably mid third quarter, we're going to see a pretty good influx of freight. Get your hazmat endorsements. Be the guy that's ready to roll when that load comes up.
Hello and welcome to CB Talk, the Combined Transport Blackwell monthly podcast. Today is May 17th, 2024, and I'm your host, Nick Card, Vice President of Operations. Today we're going to have Roger Davis with us in the studio. Roger is the division manager for Blackwell. We're going to have a great conversation about what's going on with Blackwell and what we can expect for the rest of the year. But first, the news. We'd like to congratulate the employees of the month for May. Tyler Bryan is our corporate employee of the month. Bruce Whitman is our flatbed driver of the month. Jacob Tinker is our Blackwell driver of the month. And William Brown is our heavy haul driver of the month. Thank you all for your incredible work every day for the company. Since it's May, I want to give everybody a reminder that it's RV season out there. We've got a lot of people who don't usually drive big rigs, driving some pretty big vehicles. When you drivers are out there, make sure you keep an eye out for RV drivers and other campers. Make sure you stay safe when you're out there on the road around those vehicles. In the news, Idaho passed a law that okays truck idling for resting drivers. A big area of conflict around the country is around idling your truck when you're at rest. Idaho's new law goes directly against environmentalists that are trying to get these idling rules in place. So thanks, Idaho, for recognizing our truck drivers and making sure that you protect that important quality of life for them. Our safety topic of the month for May is personal conveyance. For those who aren't familiar, personal conveyance is any use of a commercial motor vehicle as a personal vehicle. This allows you as a driver to log that time in the commercial motor vehicle as off-duty time, but there are important restrictions on what is or isn't allowed. This month in May, we're highlighting personal conveyance because it's one of the major crackdown areas for the FMCSA and DOT enforcement officers out on the road. Please, if you're going to use personal conveyance, make sure you understand the rules. The short version of personal conveyance is that if you're doing something for the benefit of the company, the truck, or the load, it's not personal conveyance. But there are other restrictions above and beyond that. If you have any questions, please reach out to compliance or driver supervisors, and they'd be happy to walk you through those rules. Don't get a ticket. You don't need those CSA points. Make sure you understand personal conveyance if you're going to use it on your logbook. That concludes our news section. On to the interview. Joining me in the studio today is Roger Davis. Roger is the division manager for Blackwell. He's been with the company since 2017. During that time, Roger has doubled the size of Blackwell, helping us grow both our customer base, our drivers, and the services that we offer. His background, he's been in trucking since 2008, working in brokerage, asset, and non-asset, a variety of different experience in trucking. In his free time, he likes to go backpacking, hunting, golfing. Roger, thanks for joining us on the program.
Thanks for having me.
So to kick it off, broad question, what's going on with Blackwell? What's happening? What's the story?
Well, Blackwell today is obviously coming off of a rough year in 2023. It kind of allowed us to shift our focuses a little bit in trucking. We have seen some positive organic growth, even though, volume was down, capacity in the market was up. But it really allowed us some opportunities to kind of go out there, solicit some new customers, a lot of new customers, and mainly more focused on some new industries. And so I think in 2024, the latter part of 2024, we'll continue seeing some changes. But I think we're going to end this year off with a bang.
Well, that's good to hear. I know there's been some concerns about, miles and profitability. There have been concerns about, what's going to happen with the company. A couple months ago, we talked with Mike, and he gave us his take sort of as the broader projection on the market. What are you looking at for Blackwell as we go through the rest of this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, Nick. Actually, what I'm used to seeing in the market is, fourth quarter. Typically, that's October, November, December is really when I see a mass influx of RFPs. That's requests for pricing from our customers. That could be new customers. That could be existing customers where we're the incumbent carrier. But this year it was a little interesting because in 2023, I probably saw a record low of those RFPs. And so a lot of customers were really trying to take advantage of those low rates, that we were coming out of COVID, right? So once the market really kind of fell out the bottom, all the rates plummeted, and I think the customers are really trying to retain those low rates. And so ironically, entering into the second quarter for us, we started seeing a lot of those RFPs come out. And so what that tells me is a lot of the customers are trying to maintain today's rates, post-COVID rates, all the way through 2024. Most of these new bids and even our existing customers, we're putting those RFPs out to go live in July. And so that's something I've never seen before. Where most companies, even maybe a company's fiscal year might end after first quarter or second quarter, it's really rare to renegotiate rates for the start of third quarter. And so my assumption is they're really trying to extend these rates and capacity all the way through the end of the year.
So does that mean you're suggesting that it's still gonna stay slow and down, or are we gonna see opportunities for like a freight pickup? Even though we're gonna be in that lower rate market, what does that look like from a driver's perspective? I mean, can they count on more miles?
I think from a driver's perspective, yes. I think what we're going to see is a lot more opportunity. Even though the rates are going to be lower, I think we're going to see volume increase dramatically. The reality is most companies that are 10 trucks, 20 trucks size really can't sustain with today's rates. It's not possible. And so my assumption, and I think you'd probably agree, is we're going to see a release of capacity pretty dramatically going into third and fourth quarter. What that does for us is obviously creates more volume of freight that starts going released into the market. And so whether rates increase or not, that's to be seen. My gut assumption is it will increase as these companies maybe start going out of business or, start restructuring their business. But volume definitely should increase. And kind of the drivers that have come to me asking me, what can we assume? I've been telling them probably mid third quarter, we're going to see a pretty good influx of freight. To be honest with you, I'm already seeing it a little bit today. And so that's a good sign.
That is a good sign. We talked with Chris last month, and one of the things that she was talking about was some of the strength that we've been seeing in the glass customers. Now they have an additional challenge of the interest rate market and what that does for commercial construction.
Right.
And I know, being food based with a lot of what Blackwell does, people always need to eat. Right. At the same time, we're also seeing grocery store prices are higher than they've ever been. You'd mentioned earlier that you were talking about some other industries. So does that mean you're looking at getting outside of the food or the primarily food market?
Yeah. So, we all know how competitive the food market is. We get affected directly, like you just mentioned. I mean, we go to the grocery store and now all of a sudden we're counting our purchases as we put them in the basket, right? It's expensive. But what that does is it really makes that sector of our industry that much more competitive. So we have looked at some different industries, aerospace being one of them, pharmaceuticals being another one. The medical grade products that we run today, CareStream is a huge company that we operate for. It's a medical industry. They're unaffected by that food market. we don't see influxes in rates. We don't see influxes in volume. Um, and it's really because they don't participate in those markets. So we've really entertained that. We have some opportunities with some new customers. And that's kind of why we put it out there that we're asking drivers, get your hazmat endorsements. That opens up a lot of doors for the drivers, be the guy that's ready to roll when that load comes up. So that's definitely something that we're entertaining. We're going to try and exploit that as much as possible.
I know from the combined transport side of things, part of why combined has spent so much of its history in the specialized markets is because rates are higher for specialized markets. Skill demands are higher, but it also means pay is higher. And so with the higher rates, that means higher driver pay. Do you think that, if we're able to transition into a more specialized refrigerated world, that we're going to be able to help these drivers with that financial paycheck?
100%. Yeah. I mean, obviously the driver pay is a direct reflection over, the revenue that we're generating as a company. The more money that we can make, the more money that we can save is always going to be passed down to our driver employees for sure.
You'd mentioned some of the changes coming up. I know we just talked about the industry, but what other kinds of changes are going on in Blackwell, and what is that going to mean for our drivers and our employees?
Well, I mean, at this point, everybody's, probably fully aware of our corporate structure now within dispatch. We made the transition to fleet managers pretty successfully in the last year and a half. That's obviously something that's evolving all the time. It's a new system for us, but we are going to go through some more changes with the hire of Denny, which is a great addition. He's going to be one of our dedicated weekend dispatchers. I know we've been kind of bouncing back and forth between Justine and Steven, and now, they're getting a little burnt out working 7 days a week. So Jeannie's filling in right now. But Denny is going to be our one main guy that's going to work Friday through Monday. Denny's, his background is heavy in trucking. He was a fleet manager and operations manager for JB Hunt. So he operated one of their large dedicated fleets. So he comes with a wealth of knowledge in the industry. And that's going to be a big deal for us, having that support over the weekend as we grow organically with our customers that have that demand. I think that's going to be really healthy for the drivers. Some of the other changes, we're making internally is being able to support a lot of the functions that, we made with driver services. So obviously a lot of the fleet managers, a lot of the account managers are going to start taking on some of the functions that driver services used to do. We're trying to create more of a one-stop shop for the drivers. Who do I call? When do I call? When can I or can't I do this? We're trying to eliminate a lot of those questions. And so the fleet manager is going to end up being almost a one-stop shop for that. Eventually, your fleet managers will be able to manage the time off of their own fleet. They're going to be able to issue comm data payments for lumpers, for pallets, accessorials like that. Makes it a little bit easier to manage for us on the corporate side as well, be able to manage those costs. And I think it's going to be a little bit easier for the drivers knowing that, hey, if I got this issue, if this is going on, if I need to make this request, call my fleet manager, So that's kind of some of the basic changes that we're making in Blackwell. But
that's definitely good to hear. I know one of the things we got some feedback on after we talked with Chris last month was the concern for drivers about that complexity of who do I need to talk to as we transition through that. But this one-stop shop, being the person who's dispatching you and working with you every day, I think that's going to be a lot of success. I know we've had quite a few drivers who are looking forward to that. Sometimes it's hard to make the transition, but once we get through it, I think it's going to be good on the other side.
I think we've seen more encouragement from the drivers. I think it was a tougher transition for the dispatchers. Especially, with like dispatchers like Deborah, or Marissa, and they're used to being that one-stop shop for everybody. And now they're kind of being pulled away from me, or excuse me, I'm kind of pulling them away from those tasks because, hey, I need Deborah and Marissa and Justine, to really be focused on that customer interaction, right? Especially when volume is as low as it is now, right? The expectations are much higher from our customers. The volume's lower. I need those guys with girls, which are my account managers, to be focused solely on the customers. The fleet managers then are the one-stop shop for the drivers.
You'd mentioned some of the lower volume experience that we've had right now. One of the driver questions that was brought in was asking about why there's so much extra time on each dispatch. Now, I would imagine that's got to have something to do with that level of customer service you mentioned. I mean, can you maybe explain a little bit more? Because I don't know the whole history of
Sure.
how that's all done today in Blackwell.
Yeah. I've had this question too, and to be honest with you, I've had the opposite question too. Why is it so tight? And there's a multitude of reasons. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. And, I try and, especially like in my orientations, when the new drivers come in, I try and, talk a little bit about what happens behind the scenes that most drivers don't see. And unbeknownst to a lot of drivers, which is fine, they don't know what the mechanics are of, just building a load once we get it to where they see it, right? Oftentimes there's weeks of planning before we even know what driver is going to get that dispatch. So really, the cycle of scheduling a load, right? First off, I rate them. It becomes contractually agreed upon that we're going to do the freight. And that's at whatever point. That's the inception of the account, right? After that, those loads typically just come to us whether we like it or not, right? The expectation of the customer is that you agreed to take this freight, this much on these days, whatever it is, X amount per week, per month. And it's up to us to source a truck for that load. Now, more times than not, that load comes over a week, maybe two, sometimes 3 weeks in advance. We have no idea who's going to be at the facility or in the vicinity of this load 3 weeks in advance. But the facilities, as everybody knows, are massive facilities. Most of them are all large distribution centers, manufacturing. And so these guys ship sometimes hundreds of loads a day. And so 3 weeks in advance, we're requesting appointments. One of two things. We're either requesting pickup and delivery appointments, or the customer's doing it for us. One of the two. We can always request what day and what time. I'd say 99 times out of 100, we don't get what we want. It's whatever they have available closest to what our request is. Lately, I say lately by probably in the past year, we're seeing a lot of staff shortage. And so we're seeing our appointments get pushed out, what they call the requested load day, the requested delivery days are not aligning. It's like, hey, we can pick it up a day early and deliver it a day late. It's like, well, that's not conducive to business for us, but we're kind of bound to that load. We have to do it. So we always take into account mileage that's on the load and the time it's going to take our drivers to get from point A to point B. But most of the time, we're kind of at the mercy of the customer or the shipper receiver team to get those appointments for them.
Got it. Do you think that's going to change as in different industries, or do you find that the medical and the hazardous chemicals that's going to be kind of the same deal, or with being a little more specialized, that might give us a little bit more flexibility there?
I think there becomes a lot more flexibility. We gotta think like if you're Costco distribution center, down in Mira Loma, it's LA. I don't even know how big that facility is. I mean, 200,000-300,000 square feet. They've got 150, 200 docks, whatever they got. This is not a storage facility at that point. This is a glorified transload dock. You know what I mean? Freight comes in, freight goes out to the stores. And so when you have that much freight exchanging hands on a daily basis, they have to stick to a schedule. You have an appointment, stick to the appointment, no exceptions. And that's when we start seeing these massive late fines, $500,000 late fines. the aerospace industry, the pharmaceutical industry, while there's quite a bit of volume, it's not that much. I mean, these guys ship 20, 30 loads a day, and the demand is just as high, but there's a lot less capacity out there that's able to do it. A lot less trucking companies are able to haul that. And so I do think, from my experience with just breaking into the industry, we're not seeing those times, those constraints at all. I mean, we know just from, working with CareString for years, we don't get held up at these guys at all. It's a day late. That's all right. If it's a day early, that's okay too.
Well, that's good. It's good to have that flexibility, especially when we're dealing with all the issues that are on the road.
Yeah.
Speaking of issues on the road, I know maintenance has been a big concern. That was something we spent some time talking to Chris about.
Mm-hmm.
And, the challenges of managing the maintenance and how that impacts dispatch and customers, equipment, how that impacts maintenance. What is Blackwell looking at this year or, over the next 12 months as far as equipment and assets are concerned? And, are there going to be changes, do you think, in terms of how Blackwell's looking at equipment for some of those maintenance reasons?
Well, I mean, as you know, we're in a constant cycle of turning our equipment. This year is probably going to be a little bit different. We're definitely going to do it at a slower rate, and we've discussed this. But I think we're still slated to purchase some new equipment. I think we already have. A lot of the old equipment that's out there, we're going to turn that this year. Hopefully we'll be successful with selling the equipment. That time will tell. But our goal is always to maintain, a 1.5 to 1 at least ratio of truck to trailers. It's beneficial for us to have drop facilities for our trailers. So I'm constantly looking for new customers that allow us to have those trailer pools. So we're definitely not going to allow that to decrease from that ratio.
Changing gears for a second, one of the things we mentioned last month was the student program. And I know most of the students end up in Blackwell. Mm-hmm. We're at that point where you're now starting to see students, they're graduating with their coaches, they're going out on their own. How has it been going so far, is your take? And what are you looking for in a student driver to bring them onto the program?
Well, the student program, as you know, has always been wildly successful for us. It costs us a lot of money to bring in students, but I think it's necessary for the amount of training that we put students through for them to be as successful as they are. Now that we're starting to see like the first graduates go into their truck, I really feel like there was never a time that we didn't have students. Even though, the market changes, we start getting more applications, right? We can pause the student program. It's always been something that's been real near and dear to us. And the drivers that graduate from that program are always wildly successful. So we're really excited to reintroduce that. We're bringing in about 2 students a week right now. And really, the purpose is to fill all of our trucks and be over capacity for drivers, right? I want more drivers than we have trucks. That allows us to really saturate our markets that we're intending to go into. So I think, historically our top performers have always been students. They hold a lower claim ratio for the most part. Me and Jason have started going out to some of the schools again, talking to some of the new students. And really cool, we're starting to see students that were encouraged to join the industry from our students. And so, quick story, today me and Jason went out to one of the truck schools, the local truck schools here. And unbeknownst to me, we were talking, and one of them was really, really interested in coming out. And to find out, his dad is driving for us currently, and he's a student, and his dad was driver of the month. And so just that's proof that it's a system that works and works well. I'm glad that we could do that for these guys. Create a lifestyle for them that they're is encouraging for them, that's rewarding for them. And so word of mouth travels fast, and I really think that's, proof is in the pudding there.
Well, we're reaching the end of our time. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about before we wrap up?
I would like to congratulate Jacob Tinker as our driver of the month for Blackwell. He's been nominated many times. Jacob does a phenomenal job for us. Just an overperformer month over month, one of our students, and he's proved to just be an absolute asset to our team. So thank you, Jacob, very much.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Roger. It's been great talking with you.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Roger, for sitting down with us. It's great to hear about the student program and the exciting prospects for Blackwell as we get through the rest of 2024. For the drivers out there that are interested in getting involved in some of these new industries, please get your hazmat certification. And if you have your hazmat certification, please reach out to the Career Center so we can update your licensing. That makes you eligible for this new freight as it comes on board. Our next episode will be out on June 21st. We're going to have a great interview with Jason Card, talking about all things recruiting and what's going on with drivers. Please send us your questions via Facebook or email them to us at cbtalk@combinedtransport.com. We appreciate your participation. It's your engagement that makes this podcast work. Thank you for your time, thank you for listening, and thank you for being a part of the Combined Transport family.